Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 16 for Monday, July 28th. My name is Farbod Merkazi. He's Jace Hatfield. ACC Media Days are done. Big Ten Media Days are done. We got a lot to talk about. A lot happened in those days. Rhett Lashlee has some comments bashing the SEC. Mike Loxley came out with some pretty shocking, revealing comments about NIL. But most importantly, we have our last installment of our tier segments. We've done the Big Ten seating chart. We've done the Big 12 Wild West. We've done the SEC cookout. And today, Jace is going to give us his ACC corporate tiers. There's a lot to get to, a lot of top heavy. We'll get to that word later on in the show. But a lot to get to with that. But before we get into anything, please like, follow, subscribe on YouTube, Flag for Discussion. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Twitter at F4Discussion, also on TikTok at Flag, the number 4 in Discussion. A lot of stuff happening on those socials. There's a chance we'll start responding to a couple of our TikTok comments because we have graduated to the point. It took 16, 15 episodes, and we have haters now.
We do. It's kind of exciting. It was really fun with all friends and getting lovely comments, but the haters is kind of, it's the next level. I feel like that means you're stepping up a little.
Right. I mean, I think we graduated from the friends commenting, or my brother was making YouTube accounts for like my grandma and commenting on behalf of her, and to the basic comments of like, you guys don't know ball, to now it's like, not everyone should have a podcast. And like, if you look at our TikTok right now, there's some mean things said in there, and I love it. On that note, episode 16, as I mentioned, ACC Media Days have concluded by the time this show is released. The SMU head coach, Rhett Lashlee, on his ACC Media Day presser, took an interesting shot at the SEC. He said, the same 6 schools have won the SEC since 1964. Not a single one is different from 1964. That's top heavy. That's not depth. Essentially, he's saying what I just said. He's saying the SEC's top heavy. There's not enough depth in the conference, and everyone talks a big game about how good the SEC is, whereas it's really not, his words, it's really not as good as people keep saying it is. It's just a certain number of teams that are propping it up. Jace, take the floor.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting shot. I like the drama. I like the antics that it causes. But I'm going to come to the defense of the SEC a little bit here. They have won the vast majority of national championships in our lifetime. Last 10 years. Last 2 years, obviously, were 2 Big Ten teams, but that's kind of too small of a sample size, I think, to like narrow down on. But in the course of the last decade or so, the SEC has been the dominant force in college football. Even over the last 4 seasons, the SEC, if you count the Pac-12 as a Power 5 conference, the Power 5 conferences over the last 4 seasons, the SEC is 62-43 against the others. By far the best. The Big Ten is the only other one with a winning record of only 48-42. So basically the same amount of losses as the SEC, but the SEC has 14 more wins. So I also think if you separate the conferences and just look at their pure output per conference, the SEC, they have the most first-round draft picks. They have the most players in the NFL. They always get the highest rated recruits comparative to the other ones. They win the most. They win the most championships. Their output is the most impressive, and they do the most with the talent that they have. And it shows, like I said, NFL rosters, national championships. So I'm going to defend the SEC and say, look at the stats, look at the numbers. They don't lie. But I also think there's some truth in what he's saying, in that the SEC is an interesting conference, because I think it's one of the few conferences that some of the lower level teams, and I think what he's saying is there's a lot more lower level teams than people realize. Those lower level teams are comfortable hiding behind the shield of the SEC and kind of saying, like, we're amazing because look at the SEC. When in reality, it's like, you haven't won the conference. You haven't even competed for the conference. You have never won a national championship within the last 30 years. We have a lot of, SEC people who love to call their schools no natties or things of that nature, when like their natty was a 1947 claimed title post World War II. So I do think that he's right in the sense that a lot of smaller dogs in the SEC kind of like to act like a big dog because they're SEC. then they might not necessarily have the right to do that. But if you're a Georgia, if you're in Alabama, even in Auburn and LSU, I'll even give Texas and Oklahoma the rights. You can talk shit. I think not. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this or not, but you can talk your
Hell
crap
yeah.
and you can say what you will. Because they have, I think, what it takes to back it up. They have the recruits, they have the draft picks, they have the wins, the accolades, the rings, the recent history, and the long history. But if you're anyone else in the SEC, I do think there is a little bit of hiding behind the shield and riding the coattails of the big dogs that is being done, and I think that might be what he's trying to get at and kind of knock off. But yeah, it was a fun comment.
There's a couple things to fight here. I agree with your take that there are some teams in the SEC that kind of hide behind the shield. Kentucky would like a chat. But that's football. We keep talking about this, and every show has the same exact take that Stoops is the best job in the country because he gets paid SEC level money for going 6-7 to 9-3, just depending. Like, he's not expected to ever win the conference. He's not expected to ever compete for a national title. He's expected to be average. As long as they're not bottoming out at Kentucky, then they're happy paying him the SEC contract they're paying him, just for respect and relevancy. You can argue, yes, that's a basketball school, but still, that in its own is basically what you're getting at. What I don't like about what Rhett Lashlee said, and look, neither of us are SEC born and raised fans. We love watching the SEC football. It's not that we hate the SEC. Neither of us grew up being fans of teams in the SEC. So we both know exactly how annoying it is for people who keep propping up the shield, propping up the fact that the SEC is the better conference. But in the end of it, you gotta understand that that's the case. And there's just a couple of different things. I feel like Rhett Lashlee tried to make a good point, and he failed at it. Because last week, and it's a different conference, but the Big 12 Media Days, Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, came out and said, he was asked about, we know you guys are deep. We know you guys have a lot of teams that can compete for your conference title. Was your goal one day to be like, we have our tentpole program who's going to compete for national titles and become a more top-heavy program? And he said, hell yeah, that's the goal. Like, Brett Yormark basically said, like, we need a top-heavy conference to be successful. So in many ways, like, in just a week, we see different people representing different conferences or different teams saying completely opposite things. Brett Lashlee, the ACC, first of all. Second of all, the ACC is a top-heavy conference. Outside of Clemson, Miami, SMU, I mean, we'll get to your tiers, but I feel like that's going to show it. There's just a lot of mid there, a lot of like meh. UNC some years, but sure, ACC is a top-heavy conference, and no one's really bashing them. So I don't understand the whole argument against being top-heavy when being top-heavy is really those teams that are going to represent your conference on a national stage.
Yeah, I think being top-heavy is better overall for the health of your conference. I like to be able to consistently rely on a couple of programs to dominate and to make the playoff and to dominate recruiting and lift up your conference in terms of fans and media and TV deals. You need that. You need those big programs that are polarizing,
Exactly.
that have strong fan bases to do that. And I think like where the Big Ten used to be, where I think they're struggling right now, and where the SEC tends to be strong at, is when you kind of have those underneath the powerhouse teams, but still very good. Those are the important teams because on any given year, they could get one stud quarterback and they can win your conference or win a national championship. Like, they have the ability to kind of stir the pot a little bit. They have the ability to upset one of your big dogs on a big home game. Like, those are the teams that the ACC lacks, that the SEC has currently. The Big Ten used to have. I think they're kind of getting back again. And I think so. It was a weird hill to die on for Rhett Lashlee to kind of bash that when if we're being realistic, that is kind of the ideal build in terms of the health of your conference. And I think what the ACC probably wants to build too.
Look, I completely agree with the fact that parity's fun in sports, but going back, I agree with everything that you just said too. I just think anyone who's defending Rhett Lashlee fully is not understanding. Do you think the Big 12 would rather their current conference right now, where 8, 9 teams, we love it, we celebrate it, but we keep saying like 7 to 9 teams can win the conference. None of them are going to be really national title contenders. Maybe in a few years as they keep building up, ASU keeps building up, Texas Tech keeps building up, sure. But do you think they prefer this current situation, or if Texas and Oklahoma were still in the conference? And then you have your Arizona States, and it's not just about brand of Texas and Oklahoma. It's like the relevancy, the strength of the team, how many resources they throw in. People like top heavy programs aren't bad for the sport, and they're not bad for your conference. They're going to give your conference relevancy on a national stage. One of the reasons the Pac-12, I would say, died was because it ate itself alive so much that no one outside of major bowl games saw the Pac-12 in like the 4-team college football playoff as much as they saw the other conferences. Obviously, we saw Washington get in, Oregon get in, but outside of those couple of years, not really. We didn't see the Pac-12 emblem being represented on a national stage, so that's part of it. Another coach did also chime in. We can ping-pong this back to Lashlee, but Coach Stig, Indiana, he had his Big Ten press conference, and he was asked why did Indiana drop the Virginia game and off their schedule, and he said, we figured we'd just adopt an SEC scheduling philosophy. Some people don't like it. I'm more focused on those 9 conference games. Basically, he's having a little bit more fun. I don't think anyone at Indiana is really scared of Virginia. So I think that was more just taking a jab at the fact that the SEC still plays 8 conference games, that it's still not figured out in a way to make the college football playoff, like the expansion that they're talking about right now, happen again, because the 9 conference games thing is a sticking point too still. I also think it's a bit of a jab against the people who kept bashing Indiana last year against their strength of schedule. Basically just having fun with that too. I'm not really as mad about Curt Cignetti taking a jab against the SEC. I think he was coming from a fun place. Rhett Lashlee tried. I think he came from a good place too. I just think he was wrong.
Yeah, and also you just joined the ACC. For Rhett Lashlee's, let's settle down a little bit. Granted, I guess you could say Curt Cignetti himself just joined. But it's the Big Ten, that is an upgrade. But at least Indiana's been not a dominant force, not even a force. But
I think the only other argument here is Rhett Lashlee. The last comment I specifically remember him saying last season was they were going into the conference title game matchup against Clemson. And against Clemson? I think so. Anyways, he saw the rankings and how the committee would stack up the teams. And he basically came out and said, so are we better off just boycotting the game and not playing the game, because that way we don't take the loss on our schedule, because we're an ACC team, we'll make the playoff because the loss isn't on our schedule? Or are we better off playing the game? Obviously, we're going to try to win, but if we lose, are we still going to make the playoff? I think that's one of the reasons. I think like that public pressure was one of the reasons the committee let SMU in. Not that they didn't deserve it, but there were other teams that had similar resumes at that point. Lashlee comes from a good place, like I said, like I keep saying. I just think it's a misguided place.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if that was his stance to take. I think maybe if, even Dabo Sweeney, I don't think that's the ACC's place to come in. I could see maybe someone from the Big Ten. Like if Dan Lanning doesn't seem like his personality, but if he was to be the one to come say that as someone who saw the Pac-12 not be top heavy, maybe he really liked that, and then he joins the Big Ten and it's pretty top heavy. He's been in the SEC for a while. Like he maybe would have had like a ground to stand on by making a comment like that. I mean, I don't think he ever would, but like Lashlee making that comment is just kind of mind-boggling. You went from the American Conference, no longer the American Athletic, to come from there to the ACC to make that shot at the SEC. especially with how dominant the SEC has been recently. I don't know. It was fun and it was entertaining, but I do not fully agree with what he was saying.
Matt Rule feels like the guy in Big Ten circles if you make that comment, because he's coaching every conference basically.
Yeah, that's a good point, including the NFC South.
Hey man, tough. Not really a tough conference. Probably easier than the Big Ten. All right,
that might be weaker than the SEC.
Yeah. Okay, so Jace, we've done my Big Ten seeding chart tiers. We've done your Big 12 Wild West. We've done our SEC cookout tiers. We've done a bunch of tiers already. Let's see how you break down the ACC, where you see teams stacking up. Obviously, same as always, let us know what your actual tiers are, and then let's go for the teams.
Perfect. So this is going to be a reminder for just the 2025 season where teams end up and how they stack for this season alone. The ACC Co. is what I called their company here. So the top tier is the C-suite. This is the teams that run the company. It's that simple. Step down, I have the senior managers in tier 2. They're strong performers. They're well respected by everybody. You can count on them to be solid. And then in tier 3, I have the middle management. They're capable employees. They take care of business. They're reliable, but they can sometimes be a little bit forgettable. And then we have the interns, tier 4, just not quite ready for any dirty work. You give them the easy stuff, the stuff you don't want to do, not super competitive. They're not taking anybody's jobs. And then lastly, you got the layoff list. These are people who are on the outs. They're not reliable. You're not going to count on them. If you need someone to do something you have no desire to, you'd reach out to them. We got the layoff list at tier 5.
I've seen these tiers so far. I've seen these tiers so far. I want Rhett Lashlee to sit with us and as we go through them. But let's kick it off.
Yeah, start at the bottom here. So the layoff list, I got 5 teams. I got Syracuse, Stanford, Wake Forest, Cal, and Virginia in the layoff list. I think Syracuse is probably my only, might have people kind of, whoa, really?
Right.
I feel comfortable with Stanford, Wake Forest, Cal, Virginia being down there. I think most people would agree. They're not winning the conference, and they're not going to be super competitive this season. I'm not sure I have any naysayers to that.
Syracuse is going to be the one that people argue with you about. I think most people expect a step back. But because they just lost so much from last year. But the fact that they had the year that they did last year, I think just seeing them in this bottom tiers is pretty shocking.
Yeah, I think between how good they were last year, combined with they actually had a little bit of momentum in the class of 2026 recruiting trail, I think a lot of people just kind of associate those two things. And with the hype of the season coming up, are kind of, oh yeah, Syracuse is going to be solid. Fran Brown, I think, is a very exciting head coach who's going to do great things at Syracuse. I just don't think 2025 is the season to do it. You're replacing your starting quarterback, right? They have Kyle McCord from Ohio State last year. He's in the NFL now, I believe, with the Eagles. They have Angeli from Notre Dame. He's transfers in. You also bring in 5 new offensive linemen from the transfer portal that you have to replace. You also lose your top 3 receivers and most of your rushing production from last year. And in both of those rooms, they're going to try to rely on in-house, 3-star recruits from previous cycles, as well as Jonte Cook. A lot of talent, but has really struggled to even not get cut from programs due to off the field and locker room issues. So it's how much can you trust 5 new linemen, a new quarterback, and a new wide receiver and rushing attack in a system like Syracuse, who's also going to play a very difficult schedule this year, a really difficult, one of the hardest in the country, and we can talk more about that later. And then defensively, they were abysmal defensively last year, and that is what cost them from being probably even better, considering they have one of the best passing attacks in the country. And it's going to be a little bit better this year, but I think with how much the offense is going to regress, even a better defense is going to struggle. And you have they had that D tackle that went to Texas in the off season, Marrod Watson. He was a 3-star last year as a freshman and turned into a beast throughout the season. And of course, as soon as he kind of got a bigger name, he was gone on the portal to Texas to go for a bigger thing. And I feel like that's also not always a great sign of your program health when you're losing really good young players that want to make it, so they go to a different school. That sometimes means they don't see that at your program, which can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Plus, like I said, they have 8 really difficult, I hate to say caked in losses, but man, they play one of the tougher schedules in the country.
Yeah, I was looking at it while you were talking. Holy crap! And we can get into that, but let's get up to the interns.
All right, the interns. So we've got a couple teams laying around here. At the bottom of it, I have Boston College, and then I have Florida State, I have Virginia Tech, and I have UNC at the interns. I think Boston College is a safe pull there. They lost a lot. Thomas Castellanos, who's on another one of the intern teams in Florida State. So I think that Florida State was a difficult one to rank. They've done a lot in the past. They recruit still well enough to be relevant, but after going, 2 wins last season, it's hard to discern where they're going to land.
Yeah, I mean, we can run through these and discuss it more, but Virginia Tech's something that I do want to talk to you about, because I think a lot of people, are you still there? Oh,
yeah,
now you're back. Sorry, your screen went away. A lot of people have doubts about Virginia Tech. I actually really like Hiram Jones, and I think they have a good shot to elevating themselves even more. I don't know exactly what to make of them. I think I agree with where you put them, because I don't have enough to justify putting them up a tier higher. But I also technically don't have enough to justify putting them here, whereas I feel like Syracuse and them might have been a good options to swap. Florida State we'll get to, because that's definitely going to be a talking point. But I want to get your take on Virginia Tech in general.
Yeah, they're actually in a similar spot to Syracuse. Similar style, they have a tough schedule. I think Syracuse is just much more difficult. Like I said, Syracuse is objectively one of the tougher schedules in the country. Virginia Tech has they play a lot of the teams we'll talk about kind of in the middle tiers in the ACC, which I think are all pretty difficult games, kind of feel like coin flip to me. And they also get South Carolina and Vandy in the non-conference, which compared to some of these other ACC schools that are playing mostly like group of 5 or even lower level schools, South Carolina and Vandy is going to be 2 tougher games to play in the non-con. And then, like I said, similar to Syracuse, they replaced like almost their entire offensive line. They lost both their best offensive linemen last year to the portal. And then similarly, like when you're replacing a whole O-line in a portal, like with 3 running backs are all also going to be new, with a wide receiver room that's also going to be mostly new, how much can I trust your ability to like navigate 5 new O-linemen, especially when the O-line wasn't very good last year? New weapons. Kyron Jones is the one like returning big name player that I'm really excited to watch. I think he's a great quarterback. With the schedule and with the team around him, I don't know if he's going to be able to carry them through what I think is going to be a pretty strong ACC this year. And I think as we move up the tiers and we start talking about why we like some of these teams, it'll make more sense why you see some of these down low. Because you have to remember, somebody has to lose these football games. And when you hear about some of the returners the other programs have, you start to realize, these teams like Virginia Tech and Syracuse, when your best players are transferring out to look for better teams to play on, it's not usually a good sign of your health. And like I said, it's their entire O-line. It's most of their weapons. All 3 of their running backs next year are going to be transfers. They were all productive at small schools, but again, 3 new transfers. You're going to need new guys to step up in the receiving game. They do return a couple decent linebackers on the defensive side of the ball. They had to use the portal for the D-line and corner, but not a lot of continuity there. It's going to be a team that's going to be relying on a bunch of patchwork to win difficult games. I'm not bought in on them enough to be able to do that. So that's kind of why I have them down here with the interns.
I think this is kind of what we talked about on one of my tiers, where I only had certain teams play slow because I figured there would just be teams that would end up having better records. I think I actually kind of encourage everyone, and we'll get through this tiers a little faster, I promise, but I encourage everyone who's listening to this to go and try to go through every ACC team and come up with a record. A lot of them are going to be 8-4, 7-5. So that just means that can't happen. There has to be extra losses somewhere. So that's where I think we understand where UNC, Florida State, and Virginia Tech are in this tiers. I know we're going to talk about Bill Belichick. I know we're going to talk about Florida State, but let's move up the tiers a little bit.
Oh, yeah. All right. So we got tier 3. This is the middle tier. We got middle management. In this tier, I have NC State, Pitt, and Duke. Just those 3 teams. I've had a lot of teams below. I do think that the difference between middle management and interns in the case of the ACC could be one 27-24 win over one of the teams in the interns. And that's the one difference between the two of you. If that game goes a different way, you could flip them. Like you said, it's when you look at the schedule, all these teams in the tier 2 to tier 4 for my list, they all play each other. And it's, okay, who gets the home games? Who do I feel confident as the quarterback to do it? Who's got the continuity in all those games? It's going to be a tight race. Any of these middle tier teams could finish 2nd or 9th, and no one would blink an eye.
I think once again, there's a lot to talk about for each of these, but I know you want to talk about NC State, so I'll give you that shot. I also want to talk about Pitt, because Pitt last year, they started up 7-0. Eli Holstein was great. He got hurt. They finished 0-6. I don't know what Pitt were looking for. Last year they had, I trust Pat Narduzzi to have a solid defense. Nothing like crazy to, I don't know, nothing crazy like Georgia level or the elite teams, but to be able to dial up a defense. But last year they had no pass rush. They had no ability to get to the quarterback or strike some fear. So other teams were able to hit them pretty hard in the pass. But like I said, because they started out 7-0 but finished 0-6, I don't know where the middle tier there is.
Yeah, for me, I really like the offense that Pitt's coming into the season with. And Pat Narduzzi being a big defensive coach, I think this year he returns back to what he was doing at Michigan State kind of during their glory days. Their defense was really elite last year, especially outside of some of the lack in like you said, with the pass rush they had at times. Defensive line, fully healthy again like they were when they were 7-0. They also bring in a big portal addition at the end, and then they return the vast majority of their secondary, which was kind of their strong suit from last season. So I think if Pat Narduzzi can get the defensive line working, that defense is going to go from what was already one of the better defenses in the country to probably being one of the best defenses in the country. I like Eli Holstein a lot on offense. They retain his top receiving production, his top rushing production. This is a team that had a lot of continuity on, like you said, with 7-0 start when they were healthy. They got banged up, had a really tough ending of the season at 0-6. It's one of the few teams in the ACC that didn't lose a lot of players in the portal and is not relying on the portal to do their patchwork for them. I'm excited to see where they do. They also, key thing here, they don't play Clemson and they don't play SMU. 2 very good teams in the ACC, and if you can avoid them, you automatically give yourself an edge, I think, over a lot of the schools that, like a Syracuse or a Virginia Tech, that have to play those types of schools.
I just think they have, if that 7-0 team is closer, I'm not saying they're going to start out 7-0 again, but if that 7-0 team is closer to who they are, they probably deserve to be bumped up a tier, because I think maybe you're looking at a potential 9-3 team, but also floor of a 5-7 team.
Yep, agreed. It's a lot of continuity that was good last year. Can it become great? I think that's kind of where I stand with them. They have a schedule that allows them to be great. We'll see where that lands them, though.
This conference is so weird, man, because we said we don't know anything, how to predict the Big 12. But that was because there's a number of just good teams, solid teams. And outside of that, we just didn't know who was going to take the next step. In the ACC, it's a lot of mid and a lot of just average teams that we don't expect any of them to take necessarily a step, but it just depends on the normal football factors like health and whatnot.
Absolutely.
We'll come back to NC State, I promise. Let's go up to the senior managers.
This is a big group of the senior managers here. So we have SMU, I have Miami, I have Louisville, and I have Georgia Tech. Those are my 4 senior managers of this conference. I think SMU is my highlighted team here, of a team that I'm excited to kind of see where you stand on and talk about them. I think Miami's pretty safe here. I think Georgia Tech, a lot of people really like. That's a team that brings a lot of continuity from last year offensively. Defensively, there's some changes, but it's not like they were a really good defense going to changes. They were a pretty subpar defense going into changes. So I feel confident that they'll either be similar or better. Their offense excites me a lot, though. I have Haynes King, who I think is consistently one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country, alongside Jamal Haynes, one of the more underrated running backs in the country. They bring back Malik Rutherford. They bring in Eric Rivers from FIU, who's kind of a star wide receiver there. That could be a really fun team to watch. And then Louisville with Jeff Brom, that's a guy I just trust to get the job done. They were solid last year. I actually like where they're headed this year with Miller Moss behind the helm out of USC.
So Louisville is where I'll start. So they back-to-back years, a lot of transfers out, a lot of transfers in. Brom's shown the fact that he can take a senior transfer quarterback, and do some pretty good things with him. Did it with Jack Plummer, did it with Tyler Shuck. So on one hand, completely right. I think I would expect them to figure out what to do with Miller Moss better than other teams if he went to a different program. They are essentially replacing their entire their entire front line, the offensive line, defensive
back
line.
end, the secondary.
They're replacing a ton. So for me, it just comes down to one, their schedule in general, and do I have their schedule pulled up? No, I don't. But anyways, Louisville's. I like where you put them. I do think they have a bottoming out potential. I think they could be falling down to middle management this year, not because of their offense, but because of the whole totality of the organization. I also think every program relies on portal guys right now, but if you really look at the programs that rely the most on them, I don't think it's going to be as bad as Florida State. Florida State got two extremes of the situation where on one hand, they went 13-0, on the other hand, went 2-10. Bringing in that many transfers. Some programs rely on just that portal class hitting. I don't think they have that much of a risk with the people Braun brought in, but at the same time, that risk exists. Miami, we learned during ACC Media Days that Carson Beck is 100%. And he has been 100% for a while from his elbow injury. That's huge. That's an offense last year that was great. And even if he is 75% of Cam Ward, you hope that is made up with the improvements that they expect to make defensively. They could easily move up even higher in the tiers and really become true, not that they're not right now, but true conference championship contenders. I think most people would still stack them at 2 or 3 in the conference, but it really depends on how much that defense improves, how much that team ends up being on the same page, more communication. It's not even just players wise. Miami was bad communication wise on defense. You knew none of the guys were on the same page. I want to talk about Georgia Tech, but I want to talk about it after we finish the tiers. I love Georgia Tech.
All right, top tier, the C-suite. There's only one team in the C-suite. They're the CEO, they're the CFO, they're the CIO, they're the C everything. It's Clemson. I think that coming to the season, they have definitively the best roster in the ACC. I think they definitively have the best coach in the ACC. I think they have the most expectations, and rightfully so. I think they have the best quarterback in the ACC. They return the best wide receiver room in the ACC. Everything points to, on paper, that Clemson should be the top dog in the ACC, and they should be the team that wins the conference. And I think anything short of winning the conference would be a disappointment for Clemson fans, and also I think for the Clemson Tigers, the football program. They're my C-suite, and I think they're the only team that deserves to be up there because they're also going to be one of the better teams in the country, not only an ACC favorite, but a national title favorite. We can say, I know there's going to be a lot of Clemson talk as this goes on and we start breaking down the structure of the ACC. But I do think, I feel very confident that they are the only team that deserves to be in that top tier at the moment. I think they are the head and shoulder favorite. And I also do think the Vegas odds kind of reflect that with the odds 100%. To bet on Clemson to win it. If I had to pick a team to give them a run for their money, I actually think Miami is the best equipped to beat Clemson, and we can dive into that here after you react to my Clemson at the top. But There's a lot of good teams and that senior managers that could be Clemson, but Clemson should be comfortable in this conference.
There isn't going to be a team on Clemson's schedule that they are going to be underdogs against. They have, you could argue Penn State, you could argue Texas, you could argue Georgia, you could argue even Ohio State, you can argue Alabama, Oregon, who cares? Clemson is right up there, no matter where you want to put them, at first to fourth best roster in the country in terms of senior-laden quarterback, a kid who finally clicked last year. Cade Klubnik, for a little bit, we just thought they were on a string of, I think bust is a hard word, is a rough word to say, but just the five-star quarterback not panning out. We saw the DJU experience and them holding on to him and before he transferred to Oregon State. Cade Klubnik was on that path. He had some great moments and then had some pretty average to below average moments too. I think last year we finally saw a click after the Georgia loss, and they earned a spot in the playoff. They put up a pretty good fight in the playoff. Obviously, it didn't work out. I think Clemson shouldn't just be considered as the ACC favorite. They should be considered as a national title favorite. My only caveat to that, and this is a question for you, what argument do you have that they'll be any better than last year? Because a large number of the program is just returning. They finally brought in some transfers this year compared to Clemson's past, but they didn't bring a massive roster of transfers. I don't think they're going to be relying on any true freshmen to help them out. So what are we seeing as the defining factor? Is it just because there's no gauntlet of a team compared to like the Ohio State last year? Or is it because they themselves have gotten better?
I think it's they themselves have gotten better. I think returning Cade Klubnik for his final year, returning breakout star Antonio Williams, you return TJ Moore, Bryant Westcoat, Tyler Brown, probably the best wide receiver in the country, or one of. I talked about him on my dark horse breakout list. I think you have a young wide receiver room who was really good with Cade Klubnik last year. They clicked really well at the end of the season. They have a whole offseason together. They go into next season together. I'm excited what they're going to do. They returned 4 out of their 5 starters on O-line. I have to imagine all these players going back for another year. They're going to develop together. They're going to grow as an offense. Like you said, they don't do a lot in the portal, but they did bring in he was an edge out of high school. He's a linebacker at Alabama. His name's Jeremiah Alexander. He was a former top 50 recruit in the country a couple years ago. He's the number 5 edge in the class. A true freshman last season. I believe he'll be a sophomore this season for them. That's a guy with a lot of upside. He didn't play a whole lot at Alabama. He can play edge. He can play linebacker. And Clemson's biggest issue last season was they couldn't stop the run. I can't remember the exact. Again, the Georgia game that they lost and the Texas game they lost. Both those teams averaged, I think, 6 yards a carry, and they couldn't stop the run. And that was their biggest issue. Is in big games they couldn't stop the run. Jeremiah Alexander, like that linebacker edge hybrid, gives them a little bit better of a chance to stop the run. And then they brought in arguably one of the best, maybe the best defensive end transfer body in the country in Will Helt from Purdue. Guy can stop the run, guy can stop the pass, can get to the quarterback and help in the passing game. He was one of the highest rated transfer portal entrants this past class. So they add to the D-line, they add to the linebacker room, which was their biggest weakness last season. I also really think they're going to be battle tested this year. They have a tough schedule at Georgia Tech, at Louisville, at South Carolina. They get SMU and LSU at home. That's a tough schedule, but I think that makes them battle tested come college football playoff time. It's not like they're going to play this easy ACC schedule and get to the playoff and not know what to do. They're going to be battle tested. They were battle tested towards the end of last year. They returned a lot of those guys that are going to get battle tested again. This is a scary team that could definitely get hot come playoff time and be a force to reckon.
Totally. I think we'll get to our official picks, but I think we know we're both leaning. Where is Miami for you? You just brought them up that they probably will give Clemson the best run for their money. For me, Miami is the obvious. If Carson Beck's healthy, they can beat anyone. But with Mario Cristobal, unfortunately, game situation-wise, they can lose to anyone. They get Notre Dame at probably the best moment. a time they could in the regular season. They get Notre Dame week 1, where they might be rolling out a true freshman quarterback. Obviously, it's on the road at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to be hard to beat, but at the same time, they will get them. You'd rather get CJ Carr in Notre Dame in his college football debut rather than week 7, week 8, where he's battle tested, like you said. But then they have Bethune-Cookman, South Florida, which is no slouch. Florida State got 3 straight games against the Florida teams. Not a terrible schedule, but not an easy one either. I think this team goes as far as Carson Beck will take them, but at the same time, similar to what you said about Clemson's defensive inability to stop the run, Miami had a defensive inability to stop anyone and anything. And they brought in the defensive coordinator from Minnesota. Supposedly, one of the things that they're doing right now is just simplifying what Miami does on defense. They lost a lot of actual pretty good players. I don't think it was a player-driven issue that they had last year. I think a lot of it was scheme-related and lack of communication related. That alone should fix at least like 10% of the defensive problems they had, 20%. And then from there, it's up to execution. If I don't think you or I expect their offense to be as high up or as vaunted as last year's offense. That was ridiculous. Sorry, my dog is behind me. But their defense is going to need to make up for that variance in what they were last year, I think.
Yeah, they were the number 1 scoring offense in the country last year. So I'm with you. I don't think that they refilled that. The reason why I think they have the best odds to give Clemson a run is, like I said, Clemson's biggest weakness last year was being able to stop the run. And no matter how good your offense is, if you can't get the other team off the field, especially because they're running the football on you, your offense isn't going to see the field that much. Miami is going to, once again, have an elite offensive line. If not the best in the ACC, the second best in the ACC. Clemson would be the other one. Yes, they lose Damian Martinez, but they bring back Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, who combined for over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns, the two of them last year. So it's not like they have no production. The running backs are guys that know what they're doing. They're guys that have been in the system. They've played with this O-line, and they've had success. And then defensively, they improve the defensive line. They get Ruben Bain back. He was injured for most of last season. He's going to be someone who's going to be a first, second round pick to the NFL one day. They also, controversial, but they got Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin, who is one of the best corners in the country last season, for the portal this past season. It was phenomenal at Wisconsin last year. He's the one that has the tampering controversy. We'll see what plays out there. But as of now, he's going to be the cornerback 2 for Miami. Their cornerback 1. One of the only bright spots in that defense last season was O.J. Frederick. He's back as a corner at Miami. So defensively, they've made some moves that could give you some hope that they'd be a little bit better. They get Ruben Bain back. And then, like I said, the only reason why I'm saying they could give Clemson, I'm not saying they will, but they could, if they can run the ball on Clemson, and Clemson's moves aren't as beneficial to the run game as they're hoping. And if Miami's offensive line and running backs really gel well and they can run the football and the defense takes that next leap, they could be a tough team for Clemson. Clemson might not be able to stop the run. Miami can control the game time, the game of possession, control the flow of the game. And if Clemson has 1 or 2 turnovers or has a stutter on offense here and there, Miami would have a shot at them. I think that's the main team that has a good chance. I like SMU as a team. I don't think they line up super well against Clemson.
They have the second best odds to win the conference. And by the way, number 3 is not close. Clemson's at plus 110, Miami's at plus 390, Louisville's at plus 800. Vegas is right there with you and I think everyone expects this to be a mainly 2-horse race as long as Carson Beck is healthy. My concern with them outside of defense is the fact that Carson Beck hasn't practiced with those guys, and the next time he puts a Miami helmet on and Miami pads on for practice, getting ready for fall camp or in fall camp, is going to be the first time he does that as a Miami Hurricane. Now, he's a senior quarterback who's done this for years, so he understands the process and how to get along with teammates. I do think they're going to miss Xavier Restrepo. Miami also had a good amount of drops last year from the receivers, including with Restrepo. I wonder if that's something that they need to be able to clean up. I like where Miami is, and I think you and I and the country in general who likes to hate on Mario Cristobal because he gives us some memeable moments, but we also argue that having a great offensive line is a good thing. And having big offensive linemen who can maul guys and tear down the other team is a good thing. And one of the things I thought about last year is it was hard because of the offense they switched to with the air raid style offense that they kind of switched to under Shannon Dawson. But if Mario Cristobal kind of decided to go back to his roots, not necessarily only pound the rock, but slow down the game a little bit, run the ball, use his offensive linemen, running backs a little bit more to give his defense some bit of a breather, it might have been better off for everyone involved. On that note, I have to ask you, let's make it official, because I don't think either of our picks are going to change unless something drastic happens. Who do you have to win the ACC?
I have the Clemson Tigers winning the ACC this year. And this is the most of the 4 Power 4 conferences. This is by far the most confident pick I have of winning their conference. I think it's the Clemson Tigers. Who do you have?
This has been my pick since we started this podcast in April. Clemson is going to win the ACC. They're going to battle for the national title. I think everything we said earlier applies here, but they are not only stout and experienced at quarterback, a quarterback who finally clicked last year. Clemson has a decent run game, finally has really good chemistry between the quarterback and his receivers, like you mentioned. And Dabo has shown us, most importantly, in my eyes, the willingness to change. And I'm not saying he went out and got 17 transfers or 20 transfers, but he brought in the guys to fill the spots that he needed. Most importantly, Dabo in the last couple of years, 3 years ago he did it, and this past year he did it. He's always been not always, but recently has been I want to not only develop my players, I want to develop my coaches. So he was reliant on his own OC, his own DC. 3 years ago, decided to fire his offensive coordinator, his in-house offensive coordinator, brought in Garrett Riley. This past year, their defense was bad last year. Not bad, but compared to Clemson standards, wasn't great. Fired their DC, brought in Tom Allen, poached him away from Penn State. And some Penn State fans apparently are very happy about that. But regardless, that just shows Dabo's added a willingness to change. And I also think more than anything, similar to what we've been saying about Penn State, that this is the best team they'll have for a while, and this is their year to do it. This is Clemson's year to win the national title. This is Clemson's year to blow away the ACC, because I don't think with the way they've been recruiting, it hasn't been the same as previous vaunted Clemson teams. And I don't think, unless Dabo takes a transfer-heavy approach this coming cycle, they're going to be right back here to reload next year. They might be good. They won't bottom out. But I don't think they're going to be elite like they are this year. That's my team to win the conference. We both agree on a conference title pick for the first time. Obviously, this isn't our official picks, but we can change them on later on. I have another question for you. Is there a team you love in this conference? Because I have one, and I feel like we might have the same. But I want to, you think that they could do so much better than what the general media thinks.
Yeah, I have 3. I know Georgia Tech is going to be yours, so I'm going to pass them off to you. And I think you're higher on them than I am, even though they're still one of mine. The 2 that I'm going to give, though, are NC State and SMU. I think SMU has a chance to be as good as they were last year and actually even better. I think last year they were a formidable opponent. I think this year they have a chance to actually make some noise in a college football playoff. Their one holdback for me is they do play a couple difficult games. That also means you could be battle tested. You can figure out where you stand on the national stage. I think they're going to have one of the best defenses in the country this year. You return a lot of your key playmakers. You had 2 defensive ends that you bring back, Cam Robinson, Isaiah Smith. You bring back Isaiah Noah Kobia and Ahmad Moss in the secondary. And you also bring back Deuce Harmon and Jalen Davis Robinson at corners. So you have your 2 best safeties, your 2 best corners, your 2 best D linemen are all back. I think that bodes really well for continuity defensively. All those guys were either all ACC or all ACC honorable mentions on those lists. Back for another year. You bring Kevin Jennings back. I didn't even mention him quite yet. They're also going to have, they had one of the better lines in the country last year. They returned the majority of the starters there. Both their tackles were all ACC tackles. They're back. Then their three interiors, they get center out of, or a guard out of Michigan. I think he'll play center for them. And then I'm blanking on his name, but a guard out of Miami who is very good as well. So they're going to have one of the better O-lines, returning experienced quarterback. And then I gave the name, again, in that like dark horse candidate show, but Derek McFall at running back, I think has an opportunity to be really special in this offense, given how elite their offensive line is going to be. Kevin Jennings is going to require a lot of attention, both with his arm and his legs. And then defensively, I think they're so good defensively, they're going to be up in a lot of football games, not needing to push the ball down the field. Derek McFall, 4-star recruit last year. Was a true freshman last year. Showed a lot of flashes on offense, didn't touch the football a whole lot. He's going to have an opportunity to be really good. And this is a team, if they get momentum, you beat Baylor, you beat TCU, kind of win those Texas games. And then they're going to have a crack at Louisville, Miami, and Clemson in the ACC. So a chance to make some noise. The opportunity is going to be there. It'll be interesting to see if they capitalize on it. I think Kevin Jennings is a really good, not great quarterback. If his development is going to be what drives SMU's ceiling this year.
So SMU has a win total of just one away. SMU has a win total of 8.5. Where are you on that?
I'm going to take the over on that. My losses for them are at Clemson and at TCU for sure. I think at Clemson is just like we've already talked about Clemson. I don't need to harp too much on that. I think that's too much for them. And then at TCU, if you've listened to the prior episodes, you know how high I am on the Horned Frogs this year.
Favorite team this year.
Yep, I'm big on Sonny Dykes and I'm big on the Horned Frogs. Also, that's a tough place to play. That's a huge game. I hope people don't underestimate. That's two big-time Texas programs. That's Fort Worth versus Heart of Dallas. There's a lot at stake in the state of Texas for recruiting, especially in that area. Two big fan bases. That'll be an exciting game. That'll be one of the more fun non-conference games we get this year. I'm gonna give them two losses there, but I think Baylor and Louisville at home they can win. That means if they can beat Miami or beat TCU, I suppose, go 1-1 in the Miami TCU game, that would put you at 9 wins on the season. So I like their over this year. I think they can win one of those two games.
I like that. NC State's over under 6.5.
Yeah, this is my longer shot option here, but I'll try to keep it brief. I trust Dave Doran. He's been there for quite a while. They had everything that could go wrong last year went wrong for them. They were Murphy's Law. They were the proof of it. Injuries, transfer outs, like Grayson McCall goes down. Casey Concepcion goes down. That was your star quarterback, your star running back. CJ Bailey stepped up really nice post Grayson McCall injury. I really like he's going to be back this year. I really like what he offers, both running and passing. They bring back both their starting running backs last year who were the only bright spot offensively, and Justin Jolly, tight end. He was a bright spot. They bring back all that. They bring back their top 2 wide receivers who hopefully with an offseason to gain some chemistry with CJ Bailey, and now that they're not just vaulted into wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 spots, but they actually have time to prepare, things can go well for them. Where things can go wrong, patchwork on the offensive line and patchwork on the defense. Patchwork being let's try and plug and play young players and a lot of transfer pieces, and let's move things around and see what happens. If that doesn't go well for them, which, as I've said many times, I'm not always a big believer in that going well, that 6.5 is why it's there, and that under is looking juicy. But if they can figure it out and they can navigate with their star wide receivers and quarterback and running backs, patchwork works out, that's a team that can make a lot of noise. And they have a schedule that is actually pretty favorable, which it's hard to find. They avoid Clemson, they avoid SMU, they avoid Louisville. The opportunity is there for sure when you're not playing those 3 teams in this conference. So a team to look out for. I think they're going to outperform that 6.5, but the patchwork makes me nervous.
And that has a lot more of the, if things go right, it'll work out. Kind of like that kind of vibe. My team that I don't know if I love them or I think they have the best shot to win the ACC other than Clemson. But I think Georgia Tech is criminally underrated right now. I think their win total in Vegas is 7.5 wins, and they're bringing back if you want to call them Clemson light, where they have a super senior quarterback, they have receivers who have played with the same quarterback for years now. They can run the ball. Their team has really taken on the personality of their offensive line head coach. Brent Key was an offensive line coach. Their team has taken on that bully ball mentality of, we're going to run the ball, we're going to make it ugly, and we're going to just outduel you, and we're going to outlast you in the end of it. And I think last year we saw how legitimate they could be with just that, 8 overtime game against Georgia.
Yeah.
So obviously they have that again on their schedule again this year. That's going to be hard to win. But if they have Clemson this year. Outside of that, they're missing a lot of the big teams. They have Colorado on the road. Then they have Gardner Webb at home, Clemson at home. So even if that's 2-1, Temple at home, Wake Forest on the road, Virginia Tech at home. I think that's 3-0. And then
they're 5-1 after that.
5-1 after that. Duke, Syracuse, NC State, Boston College. So give them one loss there. But I think that's 7, 8, and 8 and 2 at that point.
Yeah.
And then you got Georgia at Georgia to finish it off. So I get it. That's like probably a 9-3, 8-4 schedule. But I think that just automatically puts them at the over. And I think if there's a team that we keep talking about Miami and their vaunted offensive line, how they're going to maul teams. We keep talking about Clemson, about how they have the super senior roster. Well, guess who else does? Georgia Tech does. And they coach, they're very good in-game coaches. They know exactly what to plan and how to do it. They had a couple fluky losses last year. I think they're over that 7.5, and I would hammer that today.
I agree. I like that take a lot. I think like the big question mark on Georgia Tech is obviously going to be the defense going into next year. But a lot 100%. Of those like middle tier teams they play have their question marks as their offense. And I think that Georgia Tech's defense is like closer to the other team's offenses than it's hard to say. Georgia Tech's offense is much better than Virginia Tech's defense, than Virginia Tech's offense is than Georgia Tech's defense, if that makes sense. So like their toss-up games would be like at Duke, at NC State, Pitt. Then they get Pitt and Virginia Tech. Those are kind of the like middle tier teams that they're going to play. That'll be tough games. But in all cases of Duke, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, their offenses are question marks. And if you're Georgia Tech, that's pretty safe because you can score if you're Georgia Tech 28 to 40 points in those games. I don't know if any of those teams can score 28 on Georgia Tech. So I
especially
like
the way they
play.
play.
The odds. Yes, yeah, aggressive football.
I think aggressive football, but they also, obviously in college football, it's hard to actually dictate the game every game. You can be as good as you want to be, but there's something's going to come up. Your running back's going to drop the football. Your wide receiver's going to drop fourth down and a third down, and all of a sudden you have to punt. But Georgia Tech has the roster makeup and the head coaching skill to be able to control most of the games that they're playing. On the road against Colorado, that's going to be a knife fight. Temple, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. I know I just went through this schedule, but like you said, not only is their offense better than those teams' defenses, but their offense will then again be able to control the pace of the game and control the game as they see fit. And you mentioned, I completely agree with you, their defense was their down point last year, which honestly a little surprising because I remember Georgia Tech teams having at least above average defense. But at the same time, if they control the pace of the game, control the run the ball well, and really control the game in general, it's going to be hard for teams to come back, and it's going to be better for their defense in general. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with that. I think Brent Key is a good defensive coach. Obviously a great offensive coach too. And like the last point I'll make on Georgia Tech, I like where they get Colorado. I think Colorado, regardless of if they end up being good or not, is not going to start the year off in their best. I mean, new offensive line, new quarterback, new wide receivers. You can't, no more Shadur, no more Travis Hunter. I think that if there's a time to play Colorado is week 1. especially if you're Georgia Tech, your offense is back. Most of this team is back. Like, you kind of already know what you have. Colorado doesn't. It's a good time to get them. It's a good time to get hot early too. Kind of start the season off with a lot of momentum, get a big win on the road, kind of show people that you're the real deal. And yeah, on the flip side, then you get Georgia to end the season. I think that's a great momentum. If you can win that game, like they almost did last year, that's really good momentum for them heading into what could be an ACC championship game or potentially even a playoff game if things go their way.
Completely agree. So that will do it for Jace's ACC tiers, his ACC Co, our corporate style tiers for this segment. The C-suite, just a quick rundown. He has Clemson in there, solo. Senior managers are SMU, Miami, Louisville, Georgia Tech. Middle management, NC State, Pittsburgh, Duke. Interns, UNC, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Boston College. And then the layoff list is Syracuse, Stanford, Wake Forest, Cal, Virginia Tech. Any other teams you want to talk to before we move on?
No, I think we hit all the teams we want to talk about. I think we'll see what social media enjoys. I think Virginia Tech is a team I'm low on that a lot of people are high on. So I'm kind of excited to hear the commentary on.
Right. I'm going to stay in the ACC. I'm going to flip-flop our C block, Jace, because this is a team we didn't talk about much there, Florida State. And I think part of the reason we didn't talk about much is we don't know what to expect from them. They brought in a lot of new pieces, not just players, but they brought in 2 new coordinators. Mike Norvell is seriously, if he's not on the hot seat, he's on the chopping block to become on the hot seat. Thomas Castellanos a couple weeks ago went on a podcast. Their quarterback transferred in from Boston College. And Florida State's going to play Alabama week 1. Castellanos said, they don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me. Yesterday at ACC Media Days, not yesterday, last week at ACC Media Days, he said, we stand on what I said. There's no disrespect between that team or anything like that. It's just the confidence that I have in my teammates and the way we've been preparing and putting his preparation together in this offseason. Brother, I just like, I once again, I want to root for kids and players who have utmost confidence in themselves and their team. But I think that we've learned this rule of sports since we were children, and since you and I played Little League, probably. It's like, don't give the other team bulletin board material. Only bad things can come from that. And I have stories in high school how that like ruined a couple games and some time for us in baseball in high school. It's just like, you're going to go up against the University of Alabama. I don't care Nick Saban's not there. They have plenty of talent, and mind you, not only was your team 2-10 last year, the team you came from, you got benched at. And maybe that was partially you choosing to leave them, whatever. But it's not like you're coming off of this Heisman finalist season. Your team went 10-2 even, or 8-4. Like, I feel like even at 8-4, you could be able to argue this a little bit more. I don't understand where this conversation, this confidence comes from. I love it. I love the confidence. But at the same time, I just know Alabama's going to come out, and even if they're like, yeah, he didn't mean much by that, it's okay. We didn't take it literally. I know they're going to come out in that game and try to just beat the out of him, just try to destroy him.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all. I like it as a fan, but like from the perspective of like if I was a teammate, I would hate that. If you're trying to upset a team, Bama is better than you. I don't know. Thomas Castellanos has to know that. They are a better football team than where you guys are at right now. If you're trying to upset a team, the best way to do it is flying under the radar, have them overlook you, and come in and play your ass off, play a hard-fought game, and go get that win, go steal a win. Calling them out before the season starts and pissing them off and then doubling down on it is not a good way to try and set up an upset. I already, like, we talked about that Alabama Florida State game, and I believe I took Bama on the 11.5 or whatever it was at the time. Now I even feel more confident in that because I think this was just unnecessary. I don't think that's obviously Alabama's going to prepare hard for that game, But why give them any more motivation than they already had? Why stir the pot more? Also, like you said, you don't really have a leg to stand on. You haven't done anything in your career that has been like overly impressive to like make me think that you were on the level to trash talk Alabama. If I was a teammate, I would not be very happy. Be a little bit like, come on, dude, we're trying to pull off an upset here. What are you doing? Interesting take from him.
They're 13.5-point underdogs at home.
That's terrible.
That's just not the place to do it.
No.
And but by the way, college football, you get 3.5 points about when you're the home team. So you're telling me they would be 17-point underdogs on a neutral site?
3 scores.
But I don't get this take at all. Like I said, I like the kids' confidence. I like standing up for your team, but I think there is a barrier that you don't cross, especially when that involves giving the other team bulletin board material. And I think he did that. We're going to try to get out of here real quick. I do want to talk about switching conferences, Big Ten. Mike Locksley, really interesting conversation. So Maryland went 4-8 last year. Kind of the wheels fell off. And ironically, they started out the year, Taulia Tagovailoa was petitioning the NCAA to come back for another year. That was denied. They had to find another way to, more solutions for everything to come back. And they went 4-8. It wasn't a great year. Mike Locksley has revived Maryland to a degree, but not to any point of relevancy or conference competitiveness. So this at media days, he said this very poignant quote: "I own the fact that I lost my locker room," and this is Coach Locks, the locker room king, telling you this landscape. "I had to choose between paying young players who were coming in or reward the older players that have been through the fire. 3 bowl wins. I tried to do both with limited resources, and that's what you get: a locker room with haves and have-nots." When you and I were in school, one of our mentors, we asked him about NIL. NIL was coming out, and he told us very poignantly, like, I was around when the NFL installed free agency, and I thought that was going to be terrible. But look, it's turned out great. So I'm not going to take too big of a argument against NIL. What I can tell you is that it's going to create exactly what Mike Locksley said: a culture of haves and have-nots in each locker room. And part of this, like, this is just a very important conversation. Is Maryland just the example for how, like, middle-funded teams can hurt with NIL? And part of this, what he's talking about, is actually really interesting. Is, do you pay more for the new kids that you're trying to bring in, or do you pay more for the kids that you're trying to reward who stuck around, developed, and are growing within your program?
Yeah, it was the first time we've heard like real insight on the NIL issues that teams have faced. I feel like coaches have been really scared to show face about where they're at with NIL. So it's kind of cool to hear that for the first time. I do think it's reflective of where those middle funded programs are. But I really like Mike Locksley, and I like that he owned up to it. But I do think part of it wasn't so much reflective of the situation, but the lack of like. So, for instance, like they went after Malik Washington in the class of 2025. They put a lot of resources to go get him. They paid a lot of money for him. And then also Zion Lee for the class of 2026, number 3 overall player. They put a lot of resources into getting him. And I think part of it was just poor planning. Like if you know you don't have a lot of money, yeah, it's fun to go get high-level recruits and to be able to bring them in. But is that the right decision to make when you know you have limited funding and you have a lot of guys? Because if you look at their classes, you have like top-tier quarterback, top-tier defensive end, and then a lot of nothing that exciting. Both of them are like that for 25 and 26. And now, not only does that mean you can't sign these like depth classes that you're really proud of, but on the flip side, you can't afford to pay like the halves and the guys that have won 3 bowl games. If you're Mike Locksley and you're a middling program, I think you need to be able to prove to guys that are there and are good, like, hey, I care about you. I'm going to take care of you first. I think if you're a middling program, lesson learned, take care of the guys who are at your program and who have succeeded. And then be smart about and intentional about the rookies or the free agent, the recruits that you're going after. It's fun to go after. It's like when you're playing college football 26, you want to go after that 5-star when you're like a 3-star program. And sometimes you can, and it takes all of your resources. And you're like, dang, I signed this one great recruit, but I have nothing now. I'm screwed at this position, this position, this position. I think it was poor planning. So yes, the situation, it does make me a little nervous for middle programs, but I also think it's hey, maybe you just need to be smarter with your money rather than going after these high recruits and then kind of ditching everyone else.
I think that's one of the best ways to look at this. I think in general, this is one of those cases that, like you said, we don't hear coaches really show face about their NIL issues, other than the ones that want to complain constantly about tampering, which is right, or the ones that want to complain about, like, I'm just going to lose my guys and blah, blah. But this is like a coach really just talking about, like, he screwed up and he's owning it. And the fact that he's admitting in front of the media that he lost the locker room is crazy to me, because you wouldn't ever expect a coach to say, I essentially lost control. And that was partially because of the planning. I respect the self-reflection in public that he gave us. I do think of all the good things that NIL gives us, this is certainly one of the pitfalls of NIL. Jace, we're pretty much done. There's two things real quick. Number one, we got Jimbo Fisher back. He's going to be an ACC network analyst, and he's joining the best position in sports, being a fired head coach and making more money on TV. So good for him. Two, we've been getting some hate on our TikTok, particularly the one where you said you're out on DJ Lagway, you're out on Florida. I think a lot of people on the comments section are missing the point about what you were saying about the schedule. I want to give you the floor before we close it out. Obviously flagged for discussion on TikTok. Go for it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So in the video, in the clip, I say I think Florida's going 7-5 or 8-4, which, first of all, I mentioned it too in the clip, but very impressive finish based on the schedule that they play. I'll pull it up here so we can go through it together. It is not a knock on the Florida Gators or the team that they have. If anything, my doubt, and I saw a couple of comments that said this, like, agreed, Billy Napier is holding us back schedule. And so a few people, I think, were getting there. And I don't think Billy Napier is one of the better coaches in the SEC. I just don't. And when you're playing at LSU, at Miami, Texas, at Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, at Ole Miss, Florida State, even South Florida, 8-4, that is a very impressive finishing to a season where you're playing, like, you're going to play like 8-9 ranked games. That is very impressive. And I think a lot of Gator fans are kind of just automatically assuming that every young player and every potentially good player is automatically going to be elite. And like, a lot of people are just automatically all in on DJ Lagway is going to be elite. Dallas Wilson's going to be elite. Trey Wilson's going to be elite. Like, people are just kind of buying in on these guys immediately, or the transfer from Cal, UCLA, the wide receiver. Not a single player on this roster has caught 20 passes or more from DJ Lagway in like a regular season. Also, DJ Lagway last year had a shoulder injury, a core injury, a hamstring injury, a hip injury. He didn't get any surgeries. There was rumors he should have had shoulder surgery and he didn't. As someone who was a Detroit Lions fan, and Matthew Stafford had so many shoulder injuries that he didn't get surgery, and then he plays 4 games and he has to get surgery, and now he's out for a year and a half. Like, I've seen the injury bug play out. You're relying on a young quarterback who completed less than 60% of his passes. 12 touchdowns, 9 picks. His only really great performance was against Samford. All his other performances were like 50% completion, 180 yards, maybe a touchdown, probably a pick. I'm not saying he can't be great and this team can't overperform. But when you look at the injury situation of DJ Lagway, when you look at the fact that every single receiving option on this team is going to be new to him, new to some degree, right? You're going to rely on Trey Wilson, who didn't play much last year. He's only caught 19 passes from Lagway. You're going to rely on true freshman Dallas Wilson. You're going to rely on a transfer in from a guy from UCLA and Cal who's never really been a bona fide wide receiver. You're going to rely on a tight end room that also hasn't caught a lot of passes or played much with DJ Lagway. With the hardest schedule in the country. it's hard for me to just sit there and like, yep, 10-2. They're going to beat all these teams. I think it's fair to be a little skeptical and to say, hey, maybe not every part of what you want to go right will go right. I'm not saying 8-4 is like we've talked about this before the show. I'm basically saying you're winning 4 ranked games next year. That is very impressive. That'll be more than most teams in the country. I guarantee it. There'll probably be like 3 or 4 that win more ranked games than you. All probably SEC teams that had to play you. The Gators are a good team that have potential. But I think it's fair to say I'm not 100% sold that everything that could go right will go right, and they're going to end up winning 6 ranked games, including Georgia and Texas. I'm a little nervous about it.
I think the tough part for me when I'm reading the comments is I think it's part of like the whole TikTok issue. Maybe we just don't need to overreact to it. Like you listen to half the video, not like exactly what you're saying. You hear what you want to hear instead of what the guy speaking actually said. And you and I both on the show and in that TikTok said, man, the schedule's hard. And there was a comment that said, the schedule's brutal. Look at what we did last year. I'm like, yeah, cool. Last year, 7-5 or whatever, or 8, whatever you ended up at. This year is just as hard. It's not like last year has any bearing on this year, other than the fact that the coach and the quarterback are a year older. They have the potential to pop off if DJ Lagway hits, if DJ Lagway is healthy. And in no way in that clip or on the show last week did Jay say that DJ Lagway is not the guy or can't be the guy or that Florida can't be 10-2. But it's just, if we're trying to look at it realistically, they play a lot of really good teams, man. And it's really, really hard. And I mean, they have the 6th best odds to win the conference, to win the SEC. They have their over-under wins is 7.5. So it's funny because I guess you should just respond to everyone. Over-under 7.5. Vegas agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over under the odds to win the conference plus 1,600. Vegas agrees with us. So I think we'll try to make this a regular thing of responding to TikToks because it's been fun.
It is fun. And that was the first, like when we had the Georgia video, we both like talked a little bit more down on Georgia. Again, we both said like 10-2 and 11-1 is down, but talked a little down. And I feel like the Georgia fans were very receptive, or it was a lot of like, it was a conversation. They were like, oh, I see what you're saying. Like, here's where I think things go wrong. Here's where I think things go right. But I trust Kirby. Like, oh yeah, absolutely. You should. The Florida one was, I think, the first video where it was just like pure, like no idea what you're talking about. Like just like pure anger from fans. So that was kind of interesting. And like you look at their schedule last year, it's pretty much the same thing. Last year they eked out that Ole Miss win, or Jackson Dart threw like 1 million picks, it felt like. And then they played what I think was a much worse Florida State team last year. And you won 7 regular season games last season. Like I think Vegas obviously thinks you're going to be right around there again, similar to what we had said. And also, like I said, DJ Lagway, like I have had to watch so many of my like Matthew Stafford teams where we ended up not being good because he just wouldn't get the shoulder surgery, or the hamstring injury comes back. Like hamstring injuries linger, shoulder issues linger. I'm not guaranteeing he's not going to be healthy or he's not going to be great, but it's fun to be excited about your teams, but you also have to realize there is a flip side to it. And I have no bearing on Florida, like pro or against. Like I never in my life have I ever like rooted for or against Florida. I'm an Oregon, Michigan State fan, so I don't like have any overlap with those programs. In fact, like Florida's always been one of my favorite jerseys. So when I play like sports video games growing up, I would always pick Florida because I love their jerseys. But I think it's fair to question a little bit that everything might not go right. There's a world where DJ Lagway's injury lingers, and you have to figure that out. There's a world where all of your young, inexperienced wide receivers take a little bit to gel with an injured quarterback. And you, with the hard schedule, you can't figure out your offense against Texas. You can't figure out your offense at Miami. You can't figure out your offense against Georgia or against Texas A&M or LSU or Tennessee or Ole Miss or even South Florida. Like, it's hard to win football games against elite teams when you are trying to navigate injuries and youth. There's a world where it meshes and things go well. There's a world where it doesn't. Vegas has them at 7.5. I said 7 to 8 wins in the video. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that's a team that'll be a lot of fun to follow. There's a world where they're 4-8 and Billy Napier's gone. There's a world where they're 10-2 and I'm eating my words and Billy Napier is on top of the world. It's a tough schedule. It's not a knock on the Gators. It's really unfortunate circumstance for the Gators, to be honest.
I'm going to say what I said last week, and we'll wrap it. They play South Florida week 2, and you should beat South Florida, but that team's no slouch either. So before you even worry about LSU, Miami, Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, before you worry about the rest of the schedule, you got a hard team and a really well-coached team week 2. Sure, you're going to beat up on Long Island University, and we're going to have to listen through week 1 about how good everyone is, and how good DJ Lagway is, and how Billy Napier's rebuilt this monster of a team. Look, he might have. But you just got to do it before we constantly say, like, Florida's the team to beat in the conference. They have a good roster. We'll see how they play out. Whenever this show comes out, I'm going to clip this off. I'm going to respond to those guys and see where the Florida fans feel about us. I've got really blurry for some reason on here. But I'm going to clip that off and see how Florida fans feel about us, because I think that is going to be pretty poignant and really, really funny, really interesting. Wow, I'm still blurry. Am I blurry on your end?
Yeah, it is, but it's telling me that it's like a...
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm fine. I don't know. On that note, if you have stayed with us for the full hour 22, we thank you. My name is Farbod Merkazi. He's Jace Hatfield. If you like what you heard, plus Twitter talk, flagged the number 4 discussion on Twitter, F4 discussion, YouTube flag for discussion. We're also available wherever you get your podcast. Episode 16, we got a lot of big things coming up. We are going to make our official picks sometime in the middle of August before week 0 kicks off. We're going to have some fun games for season long to follow along on for anyone listening. There's a good chance, I'm 99% sure we're going to be going into a twice a week model, or at least we're going to be shooting for that. We have a lot of big things coming. I'm really happy and excited to see the growth of this podcast as it's gone on. But as I've said, if you like what you've heard, please follow us everywhere. It really means the world to us. Obviously, if we get to a point where we're big and one subscriber doesn't mean as much, we won't hit on it as much. But right now, every subscriber, every follower, I'm looking at it. I'm taking down your name. It's really fun. We're at 69 followers on TikTok. I'm rambling. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been episode 16 of Flag for Discussion. Peace.